Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Milwaukie Poetry Series reading tonight. I'm Tom Hogan, the coordinator of the series, and I want to say thank you for being here and spending the time with us. We know how much time that there is and how many demands we all have on our schedules, so you've chosen to spend the time with us and hear a great poet, so thank you very much. I also want to welcome those of you that are on the live stream. So thank you also for logging in. That's great, and we appreciate that. And the same thing is true, that there are a lot of things that are demands on your time, and you logged in with us. So I want to make some thanks, which is very important. So thanks first to the City of Milwaukie. The City of Milwaukie has supported us from the beginning. We're in our 17th year, so we are very grateful for the City of Milwaukie. Secondly, the Letting Library. So you can see we have a new Letting Library here, and which has been a wonderful thing. So it's on a bequest that Florence Letting actually made to the City of Milwaukie. And that's been a wonderful thing. So thanks to the City of Milwaukie. Thanks also to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. We have a committee. There are a couple of members that are in the back who have been passing out things and so forth. So let's give them a hand. Can we do that? Because as you know, you don't have something happen unless you have people working on it. And finally, we want to thank Willamette Falls Media Studios. So they are the two gentlemen over here, Josh Reynolds, and his son is with us tonight. So thank you very much for being here. And they're the ones that brought all the equipment, and they're the ones that are making this live stream work. A couple of things I want to call your attention to. One is that we do have posters of our series. So that's what they're for, is to take them. So please do that. And if you have a place that you would like to post it and put it up, that's what they're for. So please do that. We have a broadside of John Daniel's poem. So be sure that you get a broadside of one of his poems and you take that with you. We also, and I can tell you, we also have received another grant from the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. So we are thank you very much. Yeah. So we want to thank the Clackamas County Arts Alliance because this event tonight is sponsored in part by the Clackamas County Arts Alliance, and we are very grateful to them. We want to get some input for the grant. So particularly those of you who are first-timers here, if you could get a form from Bev back here and give us some feedback, that's very helpful in terms of us reporting back to what's going on in the series. So if you would do that, that would be great. Let's also welcome, we have the Oregon Poet Laureate Emerita with us tonight, Pauline Peterson. Thank you very much for being here, Pauline. And we also have a board member from the Oregon Poetry Association, Sharon Johnson. And Sharon is going to say a word, just a little bit about the Oregon Poetry Association.
We'll be having a conference in person this year back, and we love marketing a series like the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and so just look at the website and join us if you want.
Thank you very much, Sharon. So the Oregon Poetry Association does a lot, so take a look at their website, and this is an idea that we are going to pursue. Let me say something about future events before I introduce our poet tonight. Our poet in February is going to be Anatoly Molotkov, Tola. So he will be here reading on the second Wednesday of February. The other thing is that on Saturday, we have our annual William Stafford birthday celebration here at the library on the 13th from 2 to 4. And we've been watching the weather forecast. the weather forecast looks like low temperatures and potentially snow. So we are considering moving the event. It'll be an announcement at some point, fairly soon. But just watch the website, and if we do that, then we want to get that information out and let people know about that, because we want to have the event. So I've been looking forward to this reading. Let me introduce our poet tonight. John read here once before. We were at the Pond House at the time. We got a chance to talk a little bit about the library and the development of the library. At the time, the library was in an old building, which is very homey, but built in 1954. We now have a new, beautiful building. Our poet tonight is John Daniel, and John is the author of 11 books of poetry, essays, memoir, and fiction. His most recent are Lighted Distances, 4 Seasons on Goodrow Rim, a book of poetry published in April 2023, and Gifted, a novel set in rural Western Oregon. A former Wallace Stegner Fellow in poetry at Stanford University, he has taught creative writing at colleges and universities across the country. His books have won 3 Oregon Book Awards, a Pacific Northwest Bookseller, thank you, award, and a fellowship from the National Endowment of the Arts. He lives in the Coast Range foothills west of Eugene, Oregon, and at times over the mountains in Juniper and Ponderosa Pine Country east of Bonanza, where Lighted Distances found voice. You can find more about John by contacting him at his email or looking at his website. Would you join me in welcoming our poet for the evening, John Daniel? John. Oh.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, especially, particularly, because in order to come here and spend this time with me, you're going to miss the Republican national candidate debate. So that's a hefty sacrifice, so I appreciate it all the more. I won't be perhaps as entertaining as they, but I'll try to do my part. Thanks to you, Tom, and to all of you who make this now venerable series go for 17 years and still cooking and looking ahead. That's an achievement in itself, and it's known and respected, and you're probably the biggest reason for that. Okay. Is that better? Hello. Okay. I'm going to read mainly this evening from the new book, Lighted Distances, but I want to start with 3 cold weather poems. This is The Elm in November. The slow labor of summer is finished, the yellow weight delivered to ground. Twigs jittering, buoyant with wind, the elm comes round once more to the grace of emptiness. It enters the cold unburdened, its life withdrawn inside the solitude of its dark limbs, exact pattern against gray sky, the spare shape of enough. You've already learned my favorite season. This one came out of a 4-day ski trek in the Cascades from Crater Lake down to Lake of the Woods. I was much younger when this happened. It was 40 or 50 miles. In Sky Lake's wilderness. Winter tells the old stories. The lakes are shut like eyelids. Earning heat to pay the wind, we thread our skis between dark firs, pitch camp as the gray light leaves. Our fire throws wild shadows against the circling forest wall, while beyond that little room where we drink whiskey, laughing, the cold stars glint, the wind touches every tree. Later, inside our tent, we feel the air go still, a heaviness, and soon the ticking of fine snowfall. As we drift in and out of sleep, we hear the silent storm begin to bury us, to mound us under like the bowed young firs. Our fire hisses faintly as snow cools and covers it. Nothing then, except the creak of limbs taking on the slow, familiar weight, and the small whistling flurries of the wind. Anything we are makes no difference in this place, where trees, wind, and falling snow work their ways together in the stillness they have always known. What strange joy to huddle here, buried in our single warmth, listening to what lives outside our lives. And this poem is your first acquaintance with the place where I lived writing Lighted Distances. It's a ranch, now a former ranch, but still a property owned by good friends in south central Oregon. It's about 35 miles east of Klamath Falls. There's an old barn there. The barn. Wind clatters the loose tin roof of the barn today, as it did 35 years ago when I lived here and wrote that sound into what I hoped was a poem. Sweet hay filled the barn back then. Children filled a pail with warm squirts and left the milk cow safe for the night. I've forgotten the cow's name now. The kids and bales are gone, and the barn itself is going, board after board splayed loose by sun and storm. The door swings on squalling hinges. Snow blows in through the gaping walls and swirls on the packed earth floor, where a coffee can and scraps of wire, withered corpses of mice, and splinters of the barn's own body lie where they have lain for years. It was made, they say, down valley somewhere, before anyone can remember, dismantled and rebuilt here, close to the year I was born. And now that sparse history too is falling away with its warped boards and tattered roof, and I say, good. Why should the barn hold on to what it cannot keep? Let it strip down now to its surest self, to the stalwart posts and beams that nameless makers long in the ground adzed and joined with pegs. Let the frame stand as long as it will. Let hawks perch there by day and owls by night. Let the spirited air that once pummeled the walls now whistle freely through. Let it burnish those timbers smooth of history and time itself, of everything but the old keen light of the hunter's moon as it arcs long and mute across the clear, cold night. And here is an all-weather poem, all weather. I wrote this in 1983 in Denise Levertoff's workshop at Stanford. Her spirit runs all through it. And its long view will be very evident in what you will hear from the next book. I've had a long view, at least ever since reading Lauren Isley in junior high school. The Immense Journey. It's a great book. It's called Common Ground. Everywhere on earth, wet beginnings. Fur, feather, scale, shell, skin, bone, blood. Like an infant discovering sound after sound, a voice is finding itself in the slop and squall of birth. It sounds, and we, in whom earth happened to light a clear flame of consciousness, are only beginning to learn the language. We who are made of the ash of stars, who carry the sea we were born in, who spent millions of years learning to breathe, who shivered in fur at the reptile's feet, who trained our hands on the limbs of trees and came down, slowly straightening to look over the grasses to see that the world not only is, but is beautiful. We are earth learning to see itself, to hear, touch, taste. What it wants to be, no one knows. Finding a way in starlight and dark, it begins in beauty as we begin too, today, tomorrow, now. I get a dry mouth, so I need to do this from time to time. It's because crowds like you make me so nervous. It's your fault. From fall of 2019 into summer of 2020, I had a long sojourn on the remnant of the ranch I've mentioned in the semi-arid sage and juniper country of south central Oregon. It's a place I knew well. I lived there from 1978 to 92. I've known the place for almost half a century now. I started a loose haiku journal during my stay, which evolved into a book, a seasonal round. That's Charles Goodrich's phrase for it, a seasonal round of 383 three-line haiku-like stanzas. Also, 11 brief inclusions of prose. I mean for the stanzas to be semi-autonomous. There's a lot of white space between them on the page. Though some of them form small sequences of narrative or more meditative, others just kind of hang there, all evoked by the place and where my mind and sensibility was going during that time. I'll start with the fall at the beginning. I'd gladly read the whole book, but you folks have things to do at home. So this will be a 25-minute sampling, drawing on all 4 seasons in sequence. In reading this, I paused about 3 seconds between the stanzas just to let them hang there. Arriving at night, headlights on the driveway gate, piled high with tumbleweeds. Rimrock, valley, drifting clouds, I hold no deed, but all of it holds me. In wetside woods, I look up for glory. Dryside, I look out and far. My view for miles, hayfields, pasture, sparse homes, barns, Bryant Mountain beyond. The pasture trees, heavy with apples, deer rise on hind legs. Merely to glimpse a wild critter eases some hurt I forgot I had. 3 aspens, yellow leaves quiver in a breeze I can't feel. Sleek does drink and nuzzle at the pond. On my keyboard, a gray hair. This apron is Goodloe rim slowly weathering, crumbling toward the valley floor. Junipers and sagebrush are my neighbors, amply spaced, agreeably quiet. Zazen, the eye who breathes, the eye who counts. Have we two even met? It's okay, you can laugh. You're probably glad to learn that I do have a sense of humor. That wasn't evident in everything I've read so far. So. From the deck, I see the grove at Pine Flat, where I lived 40 years ago. My eastern eyes found this dry country bleak at first, inhospitable. But the spaciousness, the drama of clear distance stirred my spirit. I liked how the land spoke in singulars, this tree, that long sloping butte. I tried to touch with words the night sky, the smell of sagebrush after rain. The dry side seemed an open secret that might lead me to me. Midnight walk, no moon, the sky specked, studded, swirled, jammed with stars. Only a minuscule fraction, of course, of the roughly 100 billion stars in the Milky Way, which in turn is one of at least 100 billion galaxies in the universe. No star in my sight or beyond is original. After the Big Bang, as the gassy brew of the cosmos cooled and darkened, Some scientists believe that enormous filaments of invisible dark matter formed a cosmic web. Gravity, strongest at nodes where filaments crossed, gradually gathered clouds of the brew, squeezing the densest clumps harder and hotter until they flared with nuclear fusion. So the first generation of stars was born. There was light in the cosmos, seen nowhere by no one. Those shaky blue giants soon blew up, their matter rejoining the cosmic flux as space-time expanded. Stars blinked on in new galaxies, and galaxies gathered in clusters, all loosely guided, perhaps, by the unseen infrastructure of the cosmic web. If the force of gravity were just a hair weaker, the bang might have yielded nothing but the gassy brew. The slightest bit stronger, it would have produced bigger stars that would have burned faster and died sooner before planetary life had a chance to evolve. In either case, we would not have happened. Time, matter, and the forces of nature, without discernible intent, created a universe where life was possible. True night is extinct where most of us live, but on the dry side, it thrives. Bring children here. Tell them, you came of this bright heaven. You belong. Big sagebrush is its name. This one stands 6 feet tall on twisting, shaggy stems. Crush some leaves, bury your nose, breathe deep. You only thought you were awake. Wet side, symphony in green major. Dry side, undertones, grace notes, solo songs. No hidden thrush sings here. In open sky, a redtail's harsh, whistling cry. The night lights of Langell Valley, still a sparse constellation 40 years on. Cougar, who ghosted by the critter cam last night, you saw my lit window. I was writing, less sure of my direction than you were of yours. Go coffee grounds, onion peels, oatmeal glop, join the silent riot in the bin. Ah, trapped spider, evolution did not plan on sinks. Town bustles, noisy streets, stores. Is anyone amazed that we exist? I love those cheerful in their work, especially when I'm one of them. Wet-side woman heard in a tavern. Over here, I've got room to fluff. What a wonderful thing to say. Bones, a husk of hide. Yearling deer, where does your flesh roam now? Contrails dissolve to hazy mist, not dimming the too warm December sun. A drippy day. All night I dream the moist scent of sage and juniper. A doe lifts her head, drops from her muzzle, start ripple rings in the pond. Fly, I'm reading, you're buzzing. My mind is too small for you to get lost in. That'll work on you. Books for me, not screens. My fingers love the pages. The pages smell so good. Don't you sniff books? William Stafford did. He said you could tell American literature from English literature by the smell. I'm not buying that, but lovely idea. Walking the road past midnight, Christmas week, a brilliant scatter of stars. Every birth of a human child, every birth of every kind on earth is the latest in a long lineage. The Big Bang, the first stars, the cluster of galaxies known as the local group, and the second largest member of that group, our Milky Way. In a spur off one of its spiraling arms, about 4.5 billion years ago, gravity worked on a whirling disk of matter, a mix of debris from exploded stars and the original gassy brew, and resolved it into a yellow dwarf star of average size with 8 or 9 orbiting planets and countless leftover rocks. The molten mass of Earth, pummeled by asteroids and comets, slowly cooled and crusted over. Epochs of rain made the oceans. Probably in seafloor thermal vents, when Earth was still quite young, organic molecules somehow organized and learned the trick of replication. No poet, priest, philosopher, or scientist can tell us how this came about. Yet, eons later, we are here with at least an inkling of our story. Time, matter, and the forces of nature, without discernible intent, produced a planet that readily gave birth to life. The pond skinned with creased ice this morning. A spider begins an expedition. One fawn, scattered bones. Her twin stands by their mother, eligible for winter. Moonrise over Goodloe sends juniper shadows far downhill on frosted grass. A few from winter. Stepping out at night, tired of words, surprise. The soundless speech of snowfall. Juncos splash madly in the thawed edge of the pond. What are they, Nordic? Amber yarrow stalks stand sway-backed, on each seed head a dollop of snow. New snow comes drifting, slanting, swirling, slamming the windows now in gusts. Stillness of junipers, boughs filled, a few fine crystals wandering down. Hungry deer trample the snow for greens and peels in the compost bin. As I meditate, a mouse pauses at the toe of my left slipper. Snowfall, muffled hush, dark form glides above. Eagle in a snowstorm? Gone. Wild animals catch my eye. Of course, I used to be one. Wolves, come home. The quiet of moon and stars wants your voices. The man who owns Pine Flat cut down every pine but one, oozing stumps, busted crowns. I lived there once. The wind told old stories in those tall ponderosas. The bigger trees had orange bark. Their sprays of long needles glinted in sun. Nature's gesture of pines defined that place before anyone owned land or trees. This tremendous scene, wrote Emily, this whole experiment of green. The experiment made us just yesterday, and many think it's all for us. The owner is not a bad man. Few are, but chainsaws screech, trunks slam down. I open my arms with love, but the deer just stare, as if I've landed from Mars. A fawn's black and white flag goes up, black pellets rain to the snow. Some think DNA makings did arrive from space in meteorites. Carbon, oxygen, water, organic compounds, the cosmos teems with life stuff. Billions of planets in just the Milky Way, but life on Earth alone? Many suns in many skies out there, many worlds of distant relatives. I hope they wait a while. We haven't even learned to converse with crows. Moonlight walk, small heifer, belly ripped wide. Spooked, I turned for home, clacking sticks. Cougar, I'd be honored to meet you, in daylight and not for a meal. The fear that prey feel is enlivening. Mind clears, senses sharpen. We'd feel it more often if our great menace didn't wear a familiar face. Tonight, a coyote cries the call of the wild. I sip my margarita. And now it's spring. In some ways felt more like summer. April 9th, 82 degrees, damp dead grasses drying to tinder. Spring's first mosquito drilled me in the neck. She died doing what she loved. Ah, nature. Big wasp eats small moth head first, wing bits in the easy breeze. I step out, the screen door bangs, gray doves storm from the maple. Mountain bike tips, crunch. I'm fine, but this sage I crushed might be 100 years old. True. Open country now, buttercups, paintbrush, the rocky lookout over Miller Creek. 500 feet down, water rushes white and green. Just a murmur up here. I sing through stone, the murmur might say. I called you here. I know the way. Long before any critter could hear this primordial voice, this fluent tongue, mind and heart can know only a pittance of what is, yet such a fullness. If we weren't human, we would not sense the majesty of the given world. The mind that withdraws us can, for moments, make us whole again in awe. Consciousness, this fleeting glimpse, this bubble in the stream, precious past measure. Quail, your head bangle looks ridiculous. But then, you're not courting me. In the pond, the lily's deep green leaves unfurl, white blossoms peeking through. Trotting coyote at first light, head, back, tail leveled, a spear of sheer intent. Two yellow swallowtails flash dance together in the breeze that bears them away. And now it's summer. Deck zazen, dawn, such gab chattering birds. For once, I'm the quietest. That one's for Ken Pollock. Junipers shimmer in noonday heat, a black shadow pooled under each. Lizard on sunny rock, do you have questions for which warmth is not the answer? My own summer mind too often goes slack, lazy, craving amusement. I become a sump for distraction, refilling as it drains. To be distracted means, literally, to be pulled apart. It's wholeness of attention, outward, inward, that nourishes the soul. Some early ancestor of ours was single-celled and lived in water. It had perhaps one simple choice: move toward sunlight or move away. Eons from that glimmer to the human mind. Keep it fit, I tell myself. I had a medical adventure that summer, which took me away for a while, but it's turned out very well. It's not a matter of suspense here. Surgery soon. We nabbed it, my knife man thinks. Likely has not spread. Still, death snuck up and laid a hand on me. So gently, I felt nothing. Sometimes when I worry, I sense a deeper self who does not fear. To die is something better than we assume, Walt wrote before he died. On the ER gurney, my mother reached one arm up, eyes raptly intent. Around her we watched. She could not speak her experience within. Many species mourn their dead, but does each critter know that it will die? If we didn't know, would sunset or a lover's face be as beautiful? Could we love at all? What would stir us to sing, cry, tell stories? Why do we die? Nature says so. Why do we live? You tell me, says nature. Tiny owl whaps the window, twitches 2 minutes on its side, and flies away. Life does not inhabit Earth, it possesses every height, depth, cranny, inch. That fierce insistence has stuttered but never stopped. Many species fewer, the green experiment will flow on, with us or without. As you may have picked up throughout the book, I touch here and there on the mess we're making of the planet. And that strand pretty much culminates in this next sequence. For our safekeeping, we built a house for us, our pets, and all our things. The house sheltered us from wild beasts, but not from ourselves. We lived freely, unconcerned with what we took from earth or gave to it. Floors sagged, walls cracked, but still we believed the foundation was sound. The house tilts now, it quakes in wind. Seawater sloshes in the basement. Many may die, but some who live might remember our true nature. We are not random guests or hapless tourists on Earth for a quick ride. We are a conspiracy of blazing stars, land and ocean, spiraling DNA. We are old as time, strong as stalwart junipers, fresh as tomorrow's dawn. We don't go into nature or come out. We are nature, its own awareness, waking. and I'll finish with this sequence. Jackrabbit zigzags hell-bent crazy along the slope, chased only by my eyes. Black bug stops, curls up at my pen's slight touch. Huh, I thought I was writing well. Mornings come brisker now. The aspen tops are tinging yellow. Crickets pulse under evening stars, their gentle chant sounding the ages. I'm melancholy, my richest mood. In 1 week, I'm leaving Goodloe. I will miss these lighted distances to the mountain, to the stars. But I love my wet side home as well, its spiring firs and misted fields. That moist ground of fern and trillium sometimes sprouts verses too. Dry side airs and lights the spirit. Wet side freshens the deeps of soul. Joy and sorrow mixed stir me truest, like junipers fired with sundown light. So I'll stop there, and thank you. Thank you. I'll step aside for Tom here. Well, okay. You're the boss here.
Let's see, do we have it? Yes, we have it on.
Well, there we go.
Yes. So what we're going to do is have a short question and answer period. So the things that you want to ask John, and we'll do that for a bit, and then John's going to end with a poem.
Yeah.
And Bev is going to come up, and she will bring the mic around. So if you have a question for John, just raise your hand, and Bev will bring you the mic. And speak into the mic too, because we'd like to get the Q&As on the recording.
Sure.
And I'll start, so I can. Oh, we have a question over there.
Hello.
Yeah. I'll start, and it's really a two-part question. Who would you say influenced you? This is the first part, as a writer. And secondly, who are you reading now?
So many influences. I'm not sure we're even aware of a lot of our influences, but conscious influences include, prose and poetry. The aforementioned Lauren Isley, Robinson Jeffers as poet, as viewer of the universe. First poet I read in high school, wasn't in class. It was a little conspiracy I had with friends. Robinson Jeffers and Gary Snyder, and those were two of the main reasons I came west. I grew up in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. It wasn't my fault, but I did find the right coast at age 18. So, other influences in poetry, there's no poets I like better than Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman. I'm kind of a 19th century guy, but sure, many more. The Good Doctor of New Jersey, William Carlos Williams. Wallace Stevens, I struggle with, but I feel him strong. Denise, Gary Snyder, Mary Oliver, Wendell Berry, who tolerates me as a friend. Getting along okay, by the way, at 92, I think he is now. He's not really doing a lot of sheep herding anymore, but he's still in his house. He and Tanya are still in their house. So, and I'd be remiss not to mention Henry David Thoreau. I come back to, and it is Thoreau, by the way. If you really want to impress somebody as being in the know, it's not Thoreau. It's only, linguists tell us there's no way it could have been pronounced Thoreau in his time. So, Henry Thoreau, Wallace Stegner, who I had the privilege of getting to know a little. Marilyn and I lived on his property during my Stanford years, and we did chores to work off our rent. And he was long retired from teaching, and I wasn't writing prose then anyway, but I learned a lot from him about how to conduct a life, and I like the kind of what is it? Not formality, sort of a loose formality, a formality with a little give to it, and a sly sense of humor. I've been reading nonfiction. I've read an interesting book. I'm continuing my interest in the universe and consciousness. A book by a Swedish physicist. It's called The World Itself. Kind of difficult, but he's a pretty good writer for a practicing physicist. And has some really interesting ideas. He too thinks the origins of consciousness are still unknown. He thinks physics will eventually solve all problems, settle all issues. I'm not sure I agree with that, but then another book called The Brief History of Earth. And in terms of fiction, I like a writer, an Icelandic writer named Haldar Laxness. You know him? Yeah. Ordinary People is the one that won him his Nobel way back when. But I've been reading other of his novels. I highly recommend, Ordinary People. Sorry, Independent People, quite right. Thank you. That's right. He would, he might have killed me if I thanks for saving me. That book, Independent People, has the scope, the sweep, the majesty of the great big Russian novels. I mean, it's right up there. Yeah. But I just wrote it, but he wrote tremendously different kinds of books too. I just read a novel of his called Under the Glacier. It's just wry, and sort of funny, sort of serious story. Let's see, what else? I read Cormac McCarthy's last novel, and it was terrible, but he had nothing left to prove. He got his books out, did mighty well with them. I could go on, but maybe somebody else has a question. Yes, ma'am.
While you were reading, you mentioned a book that you read, and I don't recall the title.
I mentioned a book that you read.
You mentioned a book that you read. You mentioned a book that you read?
In my reading.
Yeah, and I didn't catch the title. Did you or anyone else?
Men's Journey, I think.
Men's Journey?
Yeah, just in my commentary, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
You
called
said it was really good.
What's that?
You said it was really good.
Oh, yeah, read it.
Men's Journey.
Immense.
Immense Journey.
Immense journey.
Thank you very much.
There's a paleontologist who could also really, really write. And he has many other books, too.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
When did you start writing?
Oh, that's a really good question. As a rather little boy, in the then almost rural suburb, Maryland suburb we lived in, I would pedal my bike a mile or so to Dickinson's store to buy baseball cards with a bubble gum in them. And then, not on the way there, but on the way back, I would stop, lay my bike down, just drop it probably, and go down a little grassy slope, take out a bit of yellow paper. Maybe it was a little notebook. I think it was just kind of paper, but a legal pad kind of paper, all folded up, and a pencil, and I would write a poem. And I wrote several of those, and unfortunately, none has survived. They were nothing special. They were about parades and things. But the act of writing felt me. You know, this could be me. And then I wrote in school and was encouraged by some teachers, English teachers along the way. But I had it in the back of so it was always in the back of my mind, but you know, all my growing up into my teens, I figured I don't have anything to write about. I haven't done anything except go to school, worked for the railroad. But, so I didn't. I resisted it and finally decided I had a really good job in Klamath Falls that, you know, only required about 2 or 3 hours a day out of me, and got paid a princely sum for it. So I decided to use that as a fellowship, a writing fellowship. I'm going to try. So I bought an old Royal, manual typewriter, took the bus to Eugene, and bought the biggest dictionary I could find. It was Webster's Third, I think Third, Merriam-Webster's Third, big like that, you know. I felt like a writer then. And then I attempted short stories in them, of course, using Ernest Hemingway as a model. And I wrote some bad stories with good hearts, but I was also scribbling things. I think I used the phrase in here, put the sound into what I hoped was a poem. I was writing what I hoped were some poems back then. And a friend, the only writer friend I really had in Klamath Falls, you know, she was a little older and a more advanced writer, and she said, I see more in your poetry, John, than in your prose. So I shifted an emphasis there, and along the way, I just kind of buckled down till eventually I quit the railroad, not because I was making money from writing. My first short story sold for $60 in a rock climbing magazine. But, you know, one thing starts leading to another in life, and that's some very good things happened to me. But it was down on that ranch, you know, not till I was really late 20s and early 30s. So I was kind of late to serious writing. It was then that I kind of buckled on and said, well, I'm going to just see what I can do with this, you know. And so when I won a fellowship at Stanford, I went there at 34 without a college degree, never having taken a college English course or creative writing workshop, and with two poems published, and not even in literary journals. They were published in environmental magazines. So I didn't go there brimming with confidence, but the first teacher I had there turned out to be the best teacher I've ever had. He just died this last October. And he helped me understand that I belonged in that group and challenged me in all the right ways to be better. His name was Ken Fields, not a big name. The best storyteller I've ever heard, and for me, the best teacher. So, like that, you know, but every path is different.
And you have brothers and sisters?
I have a big brother, and he doesn't write, he plays a little music. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if you would speak to infusing humor into poetry,
Yeah.
and did you did you find that you're just naturally hilarious? Or,
Quite the contrary.
like, how hard?
I'm naturally just solemn, you know,
Yes,
and pious.
yeah. I'm getting it. I'm getting that, yeah. Yeah. It's coming in loud
So
and clear.
that was one of the delights, actually, of working in this form, because a lot of haiku are, you know, intended to be funny. Some of them are. And there's just something about the lightness of the form that, you know, brought my humor out. And I realized if it was going to be even an interesting journal, let alone become a book, it should have all the humor I can find in it. So I was making an extra effort to put in humor. And that doesn't mean, I hope I didn't force anything, but I was open to all, you know. I was asking the questions of the, you know, the lizard on the sunny rock, and speaking to the spider in the sink. So I don't know. I think it's missing from a lot of, it seems, or maybe I'm just not getting it, but I think it's missing from a lot of contemporary poetry. I think a little quotient of humor wouldn't, I mean, you know, life has the happy face and the tragic face, and the blend is where the truth is. Sir?
Yeah, thanks for your reading tonight.
Sure.
And I have your book, Of Earth, that I've had for a number of years, and I really like it.
Oh, good, thank you. Those first, you may have noticed, I was,
Right, yeah,
those first
yeah,
poems
yeah.
I was reading for that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so A Prayer Among Friends, I share that with my family and friends every Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's really great. I appreciate knowing that.
But can you talk about what the span of time the poems are in Of Earth? How did that come about?
Well, they're, you know, it's a collection, and it's drawn from, I published two small press collections, one in 1988 and one in 1992. And I really veered more toward prose after leaving Stanford, but I was still writing a poem now and then. But I didn't have, you know, enough for another book until, well, close to 2010 or so. I took the best of the two earlier books and put those together with the work not previously in a book. So it spans a long time. I mean, the oldest poems, and this, tell me if I'm mangling not toward your question, instead of toward it. Like the oldest, you know, the oldest poems there go back to, they've changed a lot, but the oldest poems can go back to the 1970s, the late 1970s. Yeah, and there aren't any real recent ones in here, but they go up to, well, 2012. Well, thank you, folks.
We have one more question.
Oh,
Yeah, one
please,
Sorry.
please.
In that span of time when you were writing, can you speak to a notable change from your perspective in your writing that you really love?
Yeah. A little more humor is one. I mean, I think I've always had that, but I'm giving it more opportunities to express itself, I suppose. I don't know, it feels more like a continuum to me. For me, it's just been, you know, you write a poem, one phrase, one line, one at a time, you know, and sometimes each image, you know, makes possible the next. You know, it's like rock climbing that way. You start out and you have holds, and if you can get a hold higher, that brings another one into reach. So, it's a slow process for me, but I enjoy it. And it's just the way I've conducted my career, the way the career has conducted me, because, you know, short stories led me to poetry. Poetry, you know, I found myself, I'm writing a lot of nature poems, so-called. Why don't I write some nature so-called essays? And it took me into writing essays. There's a book of them for sale back there, by the way. In writing essays, personal essays, memory is part of that. Your personal experience is part of most personal essays, and that led me to realize that I had a memory. This is in my 40s, and that
Yeah.
and that I had two very imperfect but very interesting parents and all sorts of stuff, and it led me right into memoir. And I wrote two, a memoir and a popoir and another war. And in writing a memoir, at least many memoirs they closely resemble novels. It's a novel and with different rules. You can't make up characters, so some memoirs do. If you don't remember something well, you're supposed to tell the reader that. But it's narrative, it's scenes, it's, So that finally led me back to fiction, and I wrote my first novel, Gifted. It's over there also on the table. So one thing has just led to another. I haven't really spent much time scoping on how my perspective may have changed over the time. I just sort of let it go into the books and see what happens.
It's blossomed. I like it.
Good. Thank you.
John's going to end with a poem.
Yeah, I will. This poem reflects the mentorship of Ken Fields that I mentioned. He's all over the loose blank verse that this poem is written in. But it's a love poem. It's more of a formal presentation than many. It draws on the same terrain that you met in my reading from Lighted Distances. This is the canyon, the one I was looking down into from 500 feet above. The canyon. Here below, as the sun slides past its zenith in the pale October sky, and you have to have patience. The first sentence doesn't come to a subject and verb until the 15th line. But hang in there and we'll get there. Here below, as the sun slides past its zenith in the pale October sky, below the crumbling basalt of the canyon rim that spewed in fire when it was young, now water-stained and streaked with lichen, below the deeper layers of sand and chalk containing lives that flourished once when a warm sea lapped and pounded here, below the bright crowns of ponderosa pines and homely junipers, finding our way on the canyon floor among silvered snags, alongside the stream with its quiet song discovering deeper and deeper ages. Here we walk and rest with our good years together, plucking juniper berries, sprigs of sage, crushing them to breathe their savor, to stain ourselves with this place we love, this place where time allows us to roam as if all time were ours, as if our hearts beat to the rhythm of volcanic storms, and we breathe to rising and falling seas, as if even as we idle here, time itself were not scouring this gorge of every trace of our two lives, as if even now, slowly, not slowly at all, time were not drowning us, each from the other, from ourselves and all our places. My love, there is no snag or tree that we can cling to, no ledge where we might climb from the flood to watch our own spent bodies wash away. And yet, I tell you, because it is true, we are the luckiest of all time's fools to be alive together, exactly here, so lost in where we are and will not be, that we wander wholly, helplessly free, following the canyon at our own pace as it shows us down, with water song and the odor of sage through the long unfolding of late afternoon, our faces glowing with the same cool warmth that lights the pines and junipers, that brightens the bedrock of an ancient sea and fires far above us the rimrock cliffs, cracked and stained, crusted with age, all flaws revealed to the deepening light. Faces, my love, such as we too must wear, faces like those we wear today, beautiful for all time brings and all it bears away. Thank you.
I call attention to John's books. So they're back here, and you'll be able to get them. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give John another hand, can we? For that wonderful reading. Amen. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. Oh, okay. I said earlier. Okay. Is anybody here for their first time tonight? First time at the Milwaukie? Yeah, first time here.